The massive alien ship hung over the United Nations building like a dark cloud. It had been 3 days since the Mock Empire made first contact, and today was the first face-to-face meeting. Ambassador Yoon adjusted her formal suit one last time, before entering the specially prepared conference room. "Remember, stay calm no matter what happens," said her assistant, handing her a tablet with talking points. Yoon nodded, her heart beating fast, despite years of diplomatic experience. Nothing in her career had prepared her for meeting actual aliens. The room had been arranged with a large round table, neutral lighting, and translation devices developed in the frantic days since the aliens arrived. "They're here," someone whispered. The doors slid open, and the mock delegation entered. Yoon had seen images from the initial video communications, but nothing compared to seeing them in person. The aliens stood nearly 7 feet tall with bluish-gray skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. They moved with a strange grace despite their bulky frames. Leading them was General Drek, easily identified by the intricate patterns on his uniform and the stern set of his 4 eyes. 6 guards flanked him, each carrying what appeared to be weapons, though Earth scientists were still debating exactly what kind. The UN Security Council had debated for hours whether to allow armed aliens inside, but in the end, they'd agreed. A show of trust was needed. "Ambassador Yoon of Earth," General Drek's voice came through the translator with a metallic edge. "Your planet's hospitality is noted." Yoon bowed slightly. "General Drek, we welcome the Mock Empire to Earth and hope for peaceful relations between our worlds." The pleasantries lasted only minutes before General Drek's posture stiffened. The translator struggled with his next words, but the meaning came through clearly enough. "We have monitored your communications. We know of your weapon, the one your military calls the Beast. We demand access immediately." The room went silent. Yoon's mind raced. What weapon? Earth's militaries had agreed to transparency during these meetings. There was no superweapon called the Beast that she knew of. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding," she began carefully. General Drek slammed a device on the table. It projected images, military training videos, showing soldiers working. With German shepherds, the dogs leaped over walls, found hidden explosives, and took down practice targets. "Your Beast weapons. They track without technology. They kill without remorse. They obey complex commands. Our intelligence shows your military values them highly." Drek's 4 eyes narrowed. "We will not negotiate with a species that conceals such biological weapons." Yoon nearly laughed but caught herself. They thought military dogs were some kind of super weapon. The misunderstanding was both funny and potentially dangerous. "General Drek," she said carefully, "what you're seeing are our canine partners. Dogs. They're not weapons, they're animals we've lived alongside for thousands of years." "We have analyzed the footage," one of Drek's science officers interrupted. "These dogs can detect explosives no machine can find. They can pursue targets across impossible terrain. They can disable opponents twice their size." The alien's voice rose. "Yet they live among your young. This speaks of either extreme confidence or extreme deception." Yoon caught the eye of her military advisor across the room, who gave a small nod. A plan formed in her mind. "General, instead of trying to explain, perhaps a demonstration would be more convincing. We could arrange for you to see one of these animals up close, under controlled conditions that would make you feel safe." The aliens conferred among themselves in their clicking language. Yoon waited, keeping her face neutral, while her mind raced through the possibilities. This misunderstanding could derail everything, or become an unexpected bridge. "We accept," General Drek finally said, "but we will bring proper containment equipment. If this is truly not a weapon, then you should have no objection." "Of course," Yoon agreed. "We can arrange everything for tomorrow." As the meeting adjourned, Yoon's assistant whispered, "What are you thinking?" "They're terrified of dogs." Yoon smiled slightly. "That's exactly the point. They think we've created some kind of superweapon. When they see it's just a friendly animal that helps us, it might change how they see humans completely. And if it goes wrong," Yoon's smile faded, "then we'll have bigger problems than a diplomatic misunderstanding." She tapped her communicator. "Get me Captain Lee from the K9 training program. Tell him to bring his most well-behaved partner. And make sure it's one good with strangers." That night, Yoon couldn't sleep. First contact with an alien species now hinged on how well an alien general responded to a dog. It was absurd, yet somehow perfect. Humans had always defined themselves partly through their relationship with animals. Maybe this misunderstanding was exactly what they needed, a chance to show the mock that humans weren't conquerors, but companions. As dawn broke, Yoon prepared for what would either be a diplomatic disaster or the start of something remarkable between two worlds. Either way, history would be made today. The morning of the demonstration arrived with clear skies and nervous officials. News of the meeting had spread through government channels, and now several military leaders and scientists had joined Ambassador Phi, Yoon's team, all curious about how the aliens would react to a dog. Meanwhile, on their orbiting ship, the Mock were making their own preparations. General Drek supervised as engineers assembled what looked like a glass and metal cage, large enough to hold a bear. Its walls glowed faintly with energy fields. "Is the containment unit secure?" Drek asked his chief scientist. "Yes, General, it can withstand an attack from a creature 10 times stronger than what their videos show. The energy field will neutralize any biological weapons it might release." Another officer approached with a handheld device. "The atmospheric sensors are ready. They will detect any airborne toxins or pheromones the beast might emit." Drek nodded, checking his weapons. "Remember, show no fear. These humans control their beasts through dominance. If we appear weak, the creature may attack." Back on Earth, Captain Lee arrived at the secure facility with his German shepherd, Buddy. The large dog wagged his tail happily as they walked through security. "So this is the terrifying beast that's got the aliens scared?" laughed one guard. Lee smiled, patting Buddy's head. 8 years in active service, helped find 17 bombs, and now he's going to be Earth's ambassador. He knelt down to Buddy's level. "You'll be good, right, boy?" Buddy responded by licking his face, making Lee laugh. Ambassador Yoon approached, looking worried. "Captain, thank you for coming. How good is Buddy with strangers, especially, well, non-human strangers?" "He's seen it all, Ma'am. Worked in disaster zones, crowded cities, you name it. Nothing spooks him. He retired last year, and now he helps me work with veterans. He's as steady as they come." Yoon nodded, relief showing on her face. "That's good. The Mock are bringing some kind of containment equipment. They're genuinely frightened of what Buddy might do." Containment equipment? For him? Lee looked down at Buddy, who was now rolling, on his back hoping for a belly rub. "Do they think he breathes fire?" "They might," Yoon said seriously. "They've analyzed our training videos but completely misunderstood the context. They think dogs are some kind of biological weapon we've engineered." A young aide rushed up. "Ambassador, the Mock shuttle is landing. They're bringing more security." Then expected. Everyone moved to their positions. Captain Lee put Buddy on a simple leash and made sure he had plenty of treats in his pocket. The training area had been prepared with some basic obstacles and equipment to demonstrate Buddy's abilities. "Remember," Yoon told her team, "no sudden movements. The Mock are already nervous. Let's keep this calm and controlled." The Mock delegation entered like they were walking into battle. 6 guards surrounded General Drek and his scientists, all wearing what appeared to be protective gear. Behind them, 4 more aliens wheeled in the large containment unit. "Ambassador," General Drek said stiffly, "we are prepared for your demonstration. Where is the beast weapon?" "Captain Lee will be bringing him shortly. I want to assure you again that there's nothing to fear." Just then, from down the hallway came the sound of claws clicking on the floor. The Mock froze. One of their sensors began beeping, detecting unknown biological signature, a scientist called out, voice rising. "It matches the pattern from their military broadcasts." The guards raised their weapons. Yoon stepped forward quickly, hands raised. "Please, there's no danger. Captain Lee has complete control of the situation." Captain Lee appeared in the doorway, with Buddy walking calmly beside him. The German shepherd looked curiously at the aliens, but stayed perfectly at Lee's side. The Mock reacted immediately, backing up several steps. One dropped a piece of equipment in surprise. "Why is it not restrained properly?" Drek demanded, his voice higher than normal. "Those thin cords would not hold back such a creature." "It's just a standard leash," Lee explained calmly. "Buddy doesn't need much restraint. He's very well trained." The Mock scientists were frantically checking their devices. "General, The humans' brain patterns show elevated but controlled responses. They are aware of the danger, but not panicking. Another scientist pointed at how the humans all kept a respectful distance from Buddy. Look at their behavior. They know to avoid the creature's strike range. Even their ambassador maintains distance. What the aliens didn't understand was that the humans were simply being polite, giving Lee and Buddy space for the demonstration. Please, place the beast in the containment unit before it attacks, Drek ordered, his 4 eyes never leaving Buddy. Lee looked at the glowing cage with disbelief. That won't be necessary. Buddy won't hurt anyone. Your confidence is noted, warrior, but our scans detect powerful muscles and teeth designed for tearing flesh. Yoon stepped in. General, I understand your concern, but the containment unit would defeat the purpose of our demonstration. Captain Lee needs to show you how he works with Buddy. The aliens conferred nervously among themselves. Finally, Drek said, Very well. But at the first sign of aggression, our guards will act to protect us. Lee nodded, completely relaxed despite the tension. He looked down at Buddy, who was sitting patiently, tongue lolling out as he panted slightly. Ready to show them what? Who you can do, boy? He asked softly. Buddy's ears perked up and his tail thumped against the floor in response. The stage was set for either a breakthrough in interspecies understanding or a diplomatic disaster. Everything now depended on a retired military dog and the aliens' willingness to see beyond their fears. Captain Lee stood in the center of the room with Buddy sitting calmly at his side. The mock delegation remained at what they considered a safe distance, their postures tense. General Drek's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, scanning for any sign of danger. Before we begin, Lee said, I'd like to introduce you properly to Buddy. He's an 8-year-old German shepherd who served with me for 6 years in active military duty before retiring. Now he helps veterans adjust to civilian life. You speak of it as if it understands you, one of the mock scientists observed. He does to a degree, Lee replied. Dogs don't understand language like we do, but they recognize words, tones, and body language. We communicate quite well. General Drek shifted uncomfortably. Proceed with the demonstration, but maintain control of the beast. Lee nodded and turned to Buddy. Buddy, sit. The dog was already sitting, so Lee gave another command. Buddy, down. Immediately, Buddy lowered himself to the ground, resting his head on his paws. The mock murmured among themselves, Now, stay. Lee began walking, away from Buddy, who remained perfectly still. Lee walked all the way to the other side of the room, about 30 feet away. Come. Buddy jumped up and trotted happily to Lee's side, then sat again, looking up expectantly. Good boy, Lee said, giving him a small treat from his pocket. You control it with food rewards? A mock scientist asked, stepping forward slightly. Partly, Lee explained. During training, yes, but now he responds primarily to the commands themselves. The treats are just to show appreciation for a job well done. The scientist made notes on a device. Fascinating psychological conditioning, EI. Continued with more commands. Buddy rolled over, played dead, gave a paw to shake and spun in a circle. With each successful trick, the mock seemed to relax slightly, though they still kept their distance. These are merely entertainment behaviors, General Drek finally said. Our intelligence indicated this creature has military capabilities. It can detect hidden enemies and explosives. It can disable attackers. These are the abilities that concern us. Lee glanced at Ambassador Yoon, who nodded. You're right, General. Buddy was trained for military applications before he retired. With your permission, I can demonstrate some of those skills, too. After a brief consultation, the mock agreed. 2 human assistants entered the room, one carrying a small box. First, detection, Lee announced. Buddy was trained to find specific scents, including explosives. We've hidden a training scent in this room. It's completely harmless, but simulates what Buddy would search for in the field. Lee turned to Buddy. Buddy, seek. The command transformed the dog. His relaxed demeanor shifted to focused attention. Nose to the ground, he began systematically moving around the room, sniffing carefully. The mock watched in silence as Buddy worked his way through the space, eventually stopping at a cabinet in the corner. He sat down in front of it and looked back at Lee. He's indicating that the scent is there, Lee explained. One of the assistants. opened the cabinet, revealing the small box hidden inside. The mock scientist's instruments lit up as they recorded everything. "For his next demonstration," Lee continued, "we'll show how Buddy can help apprehend someone." The second assistant put on a heavily padded arm guard. "This person will act as a potential threat. Watch how Buddy responds." Lee gave a command in a sharp tone. "Buddy, protect." Buddy's friendly demeanor vanished instantly. He stood alert, eyes fixed on the assistant, who now began to move threateningly toward Lee. When the assistant rushed forward, Lee gave another command, and Buddy launched himself at the padded arm, grabbing it firmly with his teeth and holding on while the assistant stopped moving. "Buddy, release," Lee called, and immediately the dog let go, returning to Lee's side. The room fell silent. The mock delegation stared, their earlier fear replaced by something closer to awe. "So it is true," General Drek said quietly. "This creature can indeed do what our intelligence suggested, yet you control these abilities with mere words." "And trust," Lee added, kneeling down to scratch behind Buddy's ears. The dog leaned into the touch, his tail wagging. "Buddy doesn't obey me because he's afraid. He does it because we have a bond. We trust each other." A younger mock scientist moved forward cautiously. "How can you be certain it won't turn these abilities against you?" "Our behavior specialists analyzed the creature's physical capabilities. Its jaw strength alone could sever your limb," Lee smiled. "That's where our history comes in. Humans and dogs have lived together for thousands of years. We didn't create them as weapons. We formed partnerships that benefited both species. Their ancestors helped us hunt and we shared food and shelter. Over generations we developed deep bonds." Ambassador Yoon stepped forward. "What Captain Lee is demonstrating isn't just a trained animal, General. It's one of humanity's oldest friendships." General Drek seemed to be processing this information. "So your species formed an alliance with a predator species instead of subjugating them or engineering them into weapons?" "Exactly," Yoon replied. "And it's not just dogs. Humans have formed similar relationships with many Earth species." "One last demonstration," Lee said. He turned to Buddy and opened his arms. "Why, Buddy, hug!" The German Shepherd stood up on his hind legs, placing his front paws gently on Lee's shoulders. In this position, his face was level with the human's. Lee embraced the dog briefly before Buddy dropped back to all fours. The mock were visibly startled by this display. "It could have torn out your throat from that position," one guard observed. "But he didn't," Lee said simply, "because he's not a weapon. He's my friend." For the first time since their arrival, General Drek's posture completely relaxed. "I believe," he said slowly, "that we have much to learn about your species, Ambassador Yoon." Buddy chose that moment to shake himself vigorously, making a gentle, jingling sound with his collar tags. Several of the mock jumped, then looked embarrassed. "Perhaps," Drek added, "starting with these dogs." The spaceship hummed with tension as the alien squad moved into formation. Their metallic armor clinked softly with each careful step. One soldier, smaller than the others, couldn't hide his nervousness. His weapon shook slightly in his hands, betraying the fear behind his mask. Lee stood frozen, watching the aliens approach with fascination rather than terror. The young human had always wondered what life beyond Earth might look like. And now, the answer surrounded him in gleaming armor and strange, otherworldly shapes. Buddy felt the shift in the air immediately. The golden retriever's ears perked up, his head tilting as he sensed danger approaching his human. But something was different about this moment. Instead of barking or showing teeth, Buddy made a choice that would change everything. The dog moved, slowly but deliberately, stepping between Lee and the nervous alien soldier. He didn't growl. He didn't bare his fangs. Buddy simply stood there, his warm brown eyes focused on the alien, his body language saying something no creature had ever communicated to these beings before. "I won't hurt you, but I won't let you hurt him either." The alien soldier stopped mid-step, completely baffled. His training had taught him about weapons, about shields, about attacks and defenses. But this gentle yet firm protection was unlike anything he'd encountered. The other aliens lowered their weapons slightly, equally confused. "What is this creature doing?" the nervous soldier whispered to his companions. "It's not attacking, but it's not retreating either." Buddy remained perfectly still, his golden fur catching the strange alien lights. His tail wasn't wagging, but it wasn't tucked in fear either. He was simply being present, creating a barrier of calm determination between the two species. Lee reached down slowly and placed a hand on Buddy's head. The dog leaned into the touch slightly, but never took his eyes off the aliens. This small gesture of trust spoke volumes. Dr. Yoon had been watching from the corner of the room, fascinated by this unexpected development. She stepped forward carefully, her voice gentle but clear enough for everyone to hear. "This is what we've been trying to explain," she said, her eyes moving between the aliens and the remarkable pair before them. "Dogs aren't just animals we control or weapons we've tamed. They're our partners." The aliens exchanged glances, their communication devices crackling with confused chatter. General Drek's voice came through their helmets, sharp with frustration. "Partners?" His deep voice boomed across the room. "You expect us to believe you've formed alliances with predators? That you've chosen cooperation over domination?" Yoon nodded, a small smile crossing her face. "For thousands of years, humans and dogs have worked together. Not because we forced them to, but because we chose each other." Buddy demonstrated this perfectly. He hadn't been ordered to protect Lee. No one had trained him for this exact moment. Yet here he was, making split-second decisions that showed intelligence, loyalty, and most importantly, choice. The nervous alien soldier took a small step forward, curiosity overcoming fear. Buddy watched him carefully, but didn't move away. The E. Soldier extended one armored hand, moving slowly like someone approaching a wild animal. But Buddy wasn't wild, and he wasn't tamed either. He was something these aliens had never seen. "May I?" the soldier asked quietly, though he wasn't sure if the dog could understand. Lee nodded encouragingly. "It's okay, boy. He wants to meet you." Buddy sniffed the alien's hand, his nose twitching as he processed completely new scents. After a moment, he pressed his nose gently against the cool metal of the armor. The alien jerked back in surprise, then slowly extended his hand again. "He's warm," the soldier said in wonder. "And he chose to touch me. Why would a predator make such a choice?" Other crew members had gathered around now, watching this unprecedented interaction. Some aliens seemed amazed, others remained skeptical, but all were deeply curious. Yoon seized the moment to share more. Before humans and dogs became partners, our ancestors were different species living in the same world. Dogs were wolves then, hunting in packs, living wild. But somehow some of them began joining human tribes, not as slaves, not as tools, but as family. She gestured to Buddy, who had now sat down next to Lee, his body still alert but relaxed. This connection grew over generations. Dogs helped humans hunt and stay safe. Humans gave dogs food and shelter, but more than that, we gave each other companionship. General Drek's voice crackled again, full of doubt. "Companionship with predators? This sounds like weakness disguised as wisdom." The nervous alien soldier shook his head, still staring at Buddy. "General, I've seen our greatest weapons fall to smaller, smarter enemies. But this creature chose not to fight when he could have. He chose protection over aggression. How is that weakness?" Buddy seemed to understand he was being discussed. He looked around at the gathered aliens, then back at Lee. His tail gave a small wag just once, as if saying everything would be all right. "Watch this," Lee said softly. He held up his hand toward Buddy, who immediately placed his paw in Lee's palm. It was a simple trick, but to the aliens, it represented something profound. "He's not obeying orders," Yoon explained. "He's participating in communication. He's choosing to interact because he wants to, not because he has to." The aliens murmured among themselves, processing this revelation. For beings who understood only hierarchies of power and control, the idea of voluntary cooperation was revolutionary. The spaceship's main chamber felt different now. The cold metal walls seemed warmer somehow, though nothing had physically changed. What had transformed was the understanding between two species that had been strangers just hours before. General Drek stood motionless, staring at Buddy and Lee. His massive frame dominated the room, but something had shifted in his posture. The rigid military stance had softened just slightly. Behind his helmet's faceplate, his alien features were unreadable, yet everyone could Sense his internal struggle. Species partners, he repeated slowly, testing the unfamiliar concept. The words felt strange in his mouth, like trying to speak a language that had no equivalent in his culture. For the mock, relationships were simple. Ruler and ruled, strong and weak, predator and prey, but this was something entirely new. Dr. Yoon watched the general carefully. Years of studying interspecies relations had taught her to recognize moments of breakthrough, and this felt like one of them. Your people have always sought to conquer or be conquered, she said gently. But humans learned long ago that some of the strongest bonds come from choice, not force. Buddy, who had remained calmly by Lee's side throughout this tense exchange, suddenly did something unexpected. He walked toward General Drek. Lee's eyes widened. "Buddy, what are you doing?" But the dog moved with purpose, stopping just a few feet from the towering alien leader. He sat down, head tilted slightly, studying this imposing figure with curious brown eyes. There was no fear in his posture, no aggression, just open, patient interest. General Drek took a step back, his hand instinctively moving toward his weapon. But he stopped himself. The dog wasn't threatening him. If anything, Buddy seemed to be offering something the general didn't quite understand. "He wants to meet you," Lee said quietly, his voice steady despite the nervousness he felt. "He's curious about you." The other mock soldiers watched in fascination as their supreme commander faced a creature barely reaching his knee. The contrast was almost comical. This massive alien warrior and a friendly dog having what appeared to be a staring contest. Buddy's tail gave a small wag, not the excited, rapid movement of a dog seeing a treat, but a slow, measured gesture that seemed to say, "I see you and I'm not afraid." General Drek's breathing slowed. He'd faced countless enemies across the galaxy, creatures with fangs, claws, and weapons far more dangerous than anything this small Earth creature possessed. But none had ever approached him like this, with what appeared to be genuine interest, rather than fear or hostility. "What does it want?" he asked, his voice softer than anyone had heard it. "Nothing," Yoon replied. "Maybe just to understand you the same way you're trying to understand us." Slowly, almost reluctantly, General Drek knelt down. Even on one knee, he towered over Buddy, but the gesture made him seem less intimidating. The dog's tail wagged a bit faster. "May I?" the general asked, looking at Lee for permission. The young human nodded encouragingly. The general removed his armored gloves, revealing hands that were surprisingly similar to human ones, though larger and with a subtle blue tint. He extended one hand toward Buddy, copying the slow movement he'd seen his soldier make earlier. Buddy sniffed the offered hand, his nose working to process this completely alien scent. Then, to everyone's amazement, he pressed his head gently against the general's palm. General Drek gasped. The dog's fur was soft and warm, nothing like the cold metal and artificial materials that made up his world. More than that, he could feel something he'd never experienced before, an intentional gesture of trust from a creature that had no reason to trust him. "He's choosing this," the general whispered, wonder creeping into his voice. "He could run, could hide, but he's choosing to stay." Buddy leaned into the touch, his eyes closing contentedly. The general began to stroke the dog's fur, awkward at first, then with growing confidence. A smile, the first anyone had seen from him, started to form on his alien features. "I understand now," General Drek said, his voice filled with revelation. "This isn't about control, it's about—" He struggled for words in a language that had no equivalent for what he was experiencing. "Partnership," Lee suggested. "Friendship. Family." "Family," the general repeated, testing the word. He continued petting Buddy, who had now settled completely, enjoying the attention from this new friend. The watching mock soldiers exchanged glances, their worldview shifting as they observed their leader, the greatest warrior in their culture, sitting on the floor, bonding with what they'd initially seen as a simple Earth animal. Hours later, the ship's ceremony room had been transformed. A large table held documents written in both human languages and mock script. The formal treaty between Earth and the Mock Alliance was ready to be signed, but this wasn't just any diplomatic agreement. Beside the standard signature lines was something unprecedented in galactic history. A small section marked for Buddy's paw print. "We didn't know that animals would be part of this treaty," General Drek admitted, now bareheaded and looking much less imposing. We never considered that non-speaking beings could be partners rather than property. Dr. Yoon smiled as she prepared the special non-toxic ink for Buddy's contribution. On Earth, we've learned that the most important partnerships aren't always between those who think exactly alike. Sometimes the best allies are those who bring different strengths to the relationship. When the moment came, Buddy placed his paw carefully in the ink, then pressed it onto the treaty document. His paw print sat right next to General Drek's signature, the mark of an interstellar warrior, alongside that of a golden retriever who had changed the course of history simply by being himself. As the mock prepared to leave, General Drek lingered, crouching once more to say goodbye to Buddy. The dog licked his face, causing the alien leader to laugh, a sound that startled everyone with its warmth. "We would like to propose something," General Drek announced as he stood. "An exchange program. Our people could learn from your animals, and perhaps your animals could experience our worlds." The room buzzed with excitement at this unexpected development. "Some of our worlds have creatures you've never seen," he continued. "Beings that might teach your dogs new things, just as your dogs will teach us about true partnership." Lee hugged Buddy tightly, overwhelmed by how one dog's simple act of bravery had opened doors between worlds. As the mock ship departed, Earth's first interspecies treaty was complete, forever marked by the paw print of a dog who proved that the strongest bonds aren't forged through conquest, but through the simple choice to trust.